You're listening to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, created to help you succeed in your educational journey. Learn more at baremetalcyber.com, where additional prepcasts, books, and training materials await. Let's get started. Educational technology, or EdTech, has become a cornerstone of modern classrooms, extending far beyond simple digital textbooks or online learning portals. Today's ecosystem includes learning management systems, collaboration platforms, mobile apps, remote proctoring tools, and even artificial intelligence-driven adaptive learning programs. Each of these platforms processes sensitive student data, ranging from academic performance to behavioral analytics. The focus of privacy and security in EdTech is therefore not only about compliance with laws, but also about protecting students as a uniquely vulnerable population. For learners, this context emphasizes how EdTech sits at the intersection of opportunity and risk. It offers transformative tools for instruction and engagement, yet it simultaneously raises profound questions about surveillance, profiling, and commercial exploitation. Effective governance requires vigilance in balancing innovation with protections for student rights and dignity. The EdTech ecosystem collects a wide variety of student data categories, many of which fall under legally protected definitions. These include personal identifiers such as names, student ID numbers, and contact information, but also academic records like grades, assignments, and attendance. Increasingly, platforms also collect engagement data such as click patterns, time on task, or peer interactions, blurring the line between educational metrics and behavioral profiling. For learners, the breadth of data categories shows why privacy concerns are heightened in education. When such data is aggregated, it can reveal not only a student's performance but also intimate insights into their learning style, social interactions, or even psychological patterns. Collection pathways for student data are diverse. In classrooms, devices such as tablets and laptops generate records of assignments and assessments. Remote learning expands these pathways, with video conferencing platforms capturing images, voices, and chat transcripts. Mobile applications add another layer, tracking geolocation, device identifiers, and usage patterns. For learners, these multiple entry points highlight the complexity of protecting student privacy. Safeguards must account for data flowing through physical classrooms, cloud-based systems, and personal devices, each of which may present different vulnerabilities and governance requirements. Device management practices are especially important in education. Many schools provide managed laptops or tablets configured with monitoring software to enforce acceptable use. While these tools protect against malware and ensure compliance, they also risk overreach if used to track students beyond educational contexts. Mobile applications installed on personal devices raise similar issues, particularly when permissions are overly broad or unnecessary for educational purposes. For learners, this illustrates how security and privacy trade-offs manifest daily. Protecting devices is necessary, but intrusive monitoring or invasive permissions can erode trust and potentially violate privacy rights. Identity and access management plays a critical role in maintaining security for school communities. Single sign-on solutions allow students, parents, teachers, and administrators to access multiple applications with a single set of credentials, reducing password fatigue and strengthening oversight. However, poorly implemented systems can create keys to the kingdom, where a single compromise grants access across platforms. For learners, this underscores how convenience must be paired with strong controls, such as multi-factor authentication and session monitoring. Access must remain streamlined for educational purposes, but not at the cost of security. Role-based access and least privilege principles must be applied across teachers, staff, and vendors. Teachers may need access to classroom performance data, but not health records. Vendors may require limited technical access for troubleshooting, but not unrestricted visibility into student communications. For learners, this demonstrates how granular access decisions embody privacy principles. Rights to information are tied to purpose, ensuring that data is not exposed unnecessarily. properly designed access models protect against both malicious misuse and accidental overexposure. Data minimization and purpose limitation are especially relevant for EdTech tools. Platforms should collect only the information necessary to deliver instruction or analytics, avoiding unnecessary tracking or retention. For instance, a spelling app may need student names and progress data, but not geolocation or parental contact details. For learners, this principle shows how restraint is a cornerstone of privacy. Collecting less data reduces both exposure risks and compliance burdens, aligning with regulatory frameworks that stress proportionality. Behavioral analytics and telemetry in learning platforms create some of the most controversial risks. While such data may improve instruction by highlighting engagement patterns, it also introduces the potential for profiling and intrusive surveillance. Without careful governance, telemetry can blur into surveillance of attention spans, emotional states, or off-task behavior. For learners, this reveals how technological potential must be tempered by ethical consideration. Analytics may be beneficial in small doses, but become problematic when they cross into constant monitoring or punitive applications. Remote proctoring tools raise acute privacy questions. These systems often use webcams, microphones, and screen capture tools to monitor test takers, sometimes requiring invasive scans of personal environments. Concerns include overcollection, algorithmic bias, and the psychological toll of constant monitoring. For learners, remote proctoring highlights how academic integrity safeguards can conflict with student privacy. Institutions must carefully define boundaries, ensuring monitoring is proportionate and transparent, and avoiding intrusive practices that normalize surveillance. Video conferencing platforms became ubiquitous during remote learning surges, but their use introduces privacy obligations. Schools must establish policies around whether sessions can be recorded, how recordings are stored, and who may access them. For learners, this underscores the importance of policy clarity. A recorded classroom session may seem routine, yet it creates a new data category subject to retention, access, and disclosure obligations. Students and parents deserve clear communication about these practices. Location tracking and geofencing technologies also appear in campus services, such as attendance verification or building access. These tools may improve safety or streamline operations, but raise concerns about continuous surveillance. For learners, location tracking illustrates how privacy risks expand beyond digital records into the physical world. Without safeguards, these technologies can create detailed maps of student movement, raising risks of misuse or unauthorized disclosure. Advertising technology poses particular risks in educational contexts. EdTech platforms must avoid embedding third-party trackers or using student data for targeted advertising. Laws and industry standards increasingly prohibit such practices, recognizing that marketing in school contexts undermines student trust and parental expectations. For learners, EdTech risks demonstrate the boundary between commercial and educational purposes. Students should never be treated as data sources for advertising while engaged in learning. The Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, or COPPA, applies to online services directed at children under 13, imposing requirements for parental consent and limiting data uses. In school settings, schools may consent on behalf of parents for educational uses, but not for commercial exploitation. For learners, this intersection highlights how COPPA and FERPA work together to govern student data. COPPA addresses the online collection environment, while FERPA safeguards education records. Vendor due diligence is the final cornerstone of responsible EdTech adoption. Contracts with vendors must include clauses addressing data use limitations, security safeguards, breach notification, and data return or deletion at contract end. For learners, this demonstrates how legal agreements operationalize privacy expectations. Institutions cannot rely on promises alone. They must ensure contracts embed enforceable protections. Vendor diligence ensures that third parties handling student data remain accountable to both schools and families. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are other prepcasts on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Encryption is a cornerstone of student data protection in EdTech environments. Information stored in student information systems, learning management platforms, and assessment repositories must be encrypted at rest and in transit. This prevents unauthorized access during transmission across networks or in the event of device theft. For learners, encryption illustrates how basic technical safeguards uphold trust. Students and families rarely see encryption at work, but it is the invisible shield ensuring that sensitive educational records remain secure even in hostile digital environments. Secure configuration baselines are equally important. Learning management systems, classroom platforms, and video conferencing tools should be configured with privacy-conscious defaults. This includes disabling unnecessary features, enforcing strong authentication, and limiting data collection by default. For learners, configuration practices highlight how privacy risks often arise not from malicious intent, but from weak or careless system setups. Establishing baselines ensures consistency across classrooms and districts, reducing variability that attackers could exploit. Access logging, audit review, and anomaly detection provide accountability for sensitive student records. Institutions must record who accessed which data and when, then periodically review these logs for unusual patterns. Automated anomaly detection can identify irregular access, such as large exports of student data by unauthorized accounts. For learners, logging illustrates the principle of traceability. By creating a record of access, institutions can both deter misuse and investigate incidents effectively, reinforcing compliance with FERPA and other frameworks. Incident response planning is critical for addressing breaches that affect students, parents, or staff. Schools and vendors must define escalation pathways, communication strategies, and containment measures. For learners, incident response demonstrates that breaches are not hypothetical. They are an inevitable risk in interconnected environments. Planning ensures institutions can respond quickly and transparently, limiting harm while preserving trust in educational systems. Breach notification obligations vary by state but increasingly require timely notice to affected families when student data is compromised. Timelines may be as short as 30 days, and notices must include details about what information was exposed and steps for remediation. For learners, this highlights how transparency is not optional in modern data governance. Families have a right to know when their children's data has been placed at risk, and institutions must prepare to meet these obligations promptly. Data retention schedules and verified deletion workflows help prevent unnecessary exposure. EdTech platforms should only retain student records for as long as they are needed for instructional purposes, with clear processes for deletion once students graduate or accounts close. For learners, retention demonstrates how privacy protection extends beyond collection. Dormant accounts and legacy datasets are common sources of breaches. Verified deletion reduces attack surfaces while aligning with principles of minimization. Parents and eligible students under FERPA have rights to access and amend their records, and institutions must build processes to handle these data subject requests efficiently. For learners, this area shows how privacy rights require operational support. Rights cannot exist in theory alone. Institutions must be prepared to authenticate requesters, locate records, and respond within required timelines, providing transparency and fairness in practice. Algorithmic fairness has become an emerging concern in EdTech, particularly with adaptive learning and automated grading technologies. Algorithms that recommend coursework or grade assignments must be scrutinized for bias, ensuring they do not disadvantage students based on gender, race, disability, or socioeconomic background. For learners, this emphasizes how privacy and fairness converge. Protecting student data includes ensuring that technologies built on that data treat all learners equitably, avoiding hidden harms embedded in automated decision-making. Artificial intelligence tools in classrooms require governance to ensure safeguards around consent, oversight and appropriate usage. I may assist with tutoring or content generation, but institutions must evaluate how these systems collect and process student information. For learners, this illustrates how innovation must align with educational values. Governance ensures that AI adoption supports instruction while respecting student privacy and avoiding inappropriate or opaque data uses. Third-party processor oversight is critical for compliance. Vendors providing EdTech services often rely on sub-processors for hosting, analytics, or support. Institutions must demand transparency into these chains and ensure contracts extend protections through all layers. For learners, this reflects the recurring theme of shared accountability. Privacy obligations must cascade, ensuring every actor in the data lifecycle is bound by the same standards. Cloud hosting introduces considerations of tenancy isolation and regional storage. Student data hosted in multi-tenant cloud environments must be logically isolated to prevent cross-customer exposure. Institutions must also verify where data is stored, as regional storage laws may restrict cross-border transfers. For learners, cloud governance illustrates the globalization of education data. Schools and districts must understand not only who hosts their data, but also where and under what legal framework it resides. Staff training and acceptable use policies play a central role in operationalizing EdTech safeguards. Teachers and administrators must understand the limits of acceptable data handling, the importance of protecting credentials, and how to recognize red flags, such as phishing attempts. For learners, this highlights how human factors remain critical. Even with strong technical safeguards, privacy lapses occur when staff lack awareness or clarity on policies. Training ensures everyone in the educational community becomes a steward of student privacy. Risk assessments and privacy impact reviews should be conducted before adopting new EdTech tools. Institutions must evaluate whether the tool is necessary, what data it collects, and whether risks are mitigated. For learners, this reflects a proactive approach to governance. By embedding privacy review into procurement and adoption, schools prevent issues before they arise rather than responding after harm has occurred. Finally, transparency communications to students and parents are vital. Institutions must clearly explain what data is collected, how it is used, and what choices families have regarding sharing and analytics. For learners, this reinforces the principle of respect. Families deserve clarity and agency when entrusting sensitive student information to technology providers. Transparent communication builds trust, aligning modern innovation with the foundational values of education. In conclusion, EdTech privacy and security depend on disciplined governance across technology, contracts, and communication. Minimizing data collection, enforcing strong access controls, embedding clear vendor clauses, and ensuring accountability at every step reduce risks while enabling innovation. For learners, the lesson is that educational technology must enhance learning without compromising rights. The pathway forward lies in aligning privacy, security, and transparency so that trust in digital education remains strong for students, parents, and institutions alike. Thanks for tuning in to the Bare Metal Cyber Prepcast, your trusted source for cybersecurity news and insights. Remember to subscribe at baremetalcyber.com so you never miss an update. And visit cyberauthor.me for best-selling cybersecurity books that equip you with expert knowledge. Until next time, stay secure and stay vigilant.